Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first Product Ops HQ meetup of 2026. I'm Anna. I'm your host and community manager, and I'm tuning in from stormy Portugal. We will give a minute or so for a few more folks to join. But meantime, you can say hi in the chat and tell us where you are joining from. It's always nice to see how global our community is. I'm super excited about today's session on product ops at scale, achieving speed, alignment, and outcomes in the AI era. This will be a relaxed fireside chat between two product ops veterans, followed by audience Q&A. Please drop your questions in the Q&A as we go. We will try to address as many as possible at the end. And if we run out of time, we can also continue the conversation in our Slack. And yes, we are recording this session, and you will get the chance to catch the replay after. Before introducing our guests for today, a quick thank you to Dragonboat for sponsoring our community. Dragonboat is the #1 AI product operating system that enables product executives, revenue, and operation teams to strategize, plan, and deliver products that accelerate customer and business outcomes at scale. Dragonboat is built by a team of operating experts with the most cutting-edge AI and data technology, and it is trusted by leading enterprises. So if your teams haven't tried Dragonboat yet, check it out at dragonboat.ai. This is your, you need Dragonboat because your AI-powered teams need AI-powered orchestration. And with that, I'm super happy to welcome Becky Flint, who will guide today's conversation. Becky is a product and tech executive based in Silicon Valley, and she has built and scaled product teams, portfolio management, and product operations globally for both startups and Fortune 500 companies, including PayPal, BigCommerce, Shutterfly, and Feedzai, during their rapid growth and transformation phase. Currently, Becky is the founder and CEO of Dragonboat, with a mission to enable every product team to achieve more impact faster. It's really great to have you here, Becky. Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
And joining Becky today is also Rukmini Baruah. Rukmini is a product operations and digital transformation leader with a track record of scaling organizations from early stage startups through IPO and into complex enterprise environments. Her career spans hypergrowth and transformation roles at companies including Unicorn Carbon Health, Firefly, and Aircar, where she built and scaled product operating systems and execution governance across rapidly growing teams. Most recently, she was recognized as winner of Top AI Idea 2025 for building an inclusive AI-powered teaching assistance for neurodiverse students. Rukmini currently works as a senior product consultant and also serves on the advisory board at the University of San Francisco School of Management. So welcome, Rukmini, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure and honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, time to pass the mic to Becky. Becky, Rukmini, thank you, and the stage is all yours.
Cool. Thanks, Anna. And so great to be back to the community again in a new year. And I'm so happy to also have Rukmini on the panel. Now we switch positions. Very, very recently, end of last year, we had an AI panel discussion for product, and Rukmini did such a wonderful job in, moderating the session, had a really great conversation. So I'm now so excited to hear more from her side of what some of the interesting challenges, needs, and tips around product operations at scale. And also at the same time, obviously, it's a community as well. I want to hear more. Also from you, feel free to put in your chat and questions in the chat so then we can pick it up in the end. So first, Rukmini, you have built and scaled product ops, like Anna introduced, in different environments. Some of hyper-growth startups, some are larger and more complex. What are some of the things that you notice that take to achieve both the speed and alignment and complexity and complex product organizations?
Great question, Becky. But before I start, I must say thank you, Becky, for having me here. It is amazing to connect with trailblazing women and leaders like yourself who are building companies and building legacy. It's not easy. So hats off, Becky, for all that you do, and hats off to Anna and Leah for the product ops community that you continue to build on. So thank you for having me. Great question on speed and alignment, right? Like, let's reframe that. Speed and alignment, those two terms, I think gives all of us a little bit of stress. But one thing to remember is that speed comes from clarity, and alignment is not just consensus or like more meetings. Alignment is really, it comes from shared decision logic. So product operations as our function, it has to evolve as the organization evolves. Like Becky said, I've worked across hypergrowth companies, larger complex organizations. So when I think of like product operations and achieving speed at scale, usually I anchor on three things. The first thing being like disciplined release readiness, launch governance. That's something that product operations is very good at. We're very close to the product. And our focus is on flow, like tight release cadence, fast feedback loops. And I saw this very clearly in a fast moving unicorn startup that I was a part of, where by chance and by grace, I got to lead product operations with a phenomenal product operations function for a mission critical vaccination effort. And the organization and our clinical staff ended up vaccinating over 1.5 million patients. And that scale for product operations and the fact that we were part of it, like, changed everything for us. So once we were operating at that level of real world impact, we were not only embedded with our product engineering design teams, we were embedded with our like on the ground clinical teams, implementation teams, training teams. And then we saw on the ground how our changes land in practice. We saw where workflows broke down. And so we then, made sure that that feedback flowed directly into product. So this is something that went from a hypergrowth to a quick large scaling project. Now, if I take my lens back out and think of like now on a larger organization, which is Becky's question, like what happens when organizations grow and you're part of a larger complex organization? What's also important is like coherence across a portfolio level. And I think Becky and the company she's building, Dragonboat, does exactly that. You start to see like more matrix teams, you start to see competing initiatives, you start to see different audiences needing different levels of detail. And that's something I've learned the hard way along the road for me. So it often means having portfolio level visibility tools and portfolio level priority. And it's important then product operations coming in and actually rolling work up into initiatives and not just features, and giving leaders and teams a shared view of like what actually matters to the business. And the third thing I would say, Becky, is like in a bigger organization, like I have seen that, that different shift, like MBRs and QBRs as alignment and decision rhythms, infrastructure is really important in larger complex organizations. At that point, like your speed actually comes from predictable like decision rhythms. I'm not saying having those, meetings just for the sake of having them, but having them in a systemic way, because your leaders and teams can align on what's moving, what's not moving, and why. And that's when you kind of start to see and you prevent surprise escalations. You start to create decision stickiness. So on a final note, what I'd like to say is I look at product operations like evolving across three layers, right? As organizations start to scale. The first is like the flow layer, which is like your what we're used to, like releases, feedback loops, testing, execution quality. The next comes the clarity layer, which is like, working with our data teams to spin up dashboards, working on prioritization, portfolio visibility, and shared understanding. The third thing is really systems layer, which is the QBRs, the MBRs, cadence governance, launch governance as infrastructure. So at this point, we are, all of us are operating in the AI era. It's everywhere. And so it doesn't, AI will not replace your product sense or operational judgment. But what it will do for us is that it can be our powerful thought partners. As these organizations scale, especially for me, it's helped me when I just designed recently a product operating model for a large organization. It was a it was an unfamiliar metrics organization I haven't seen before. So it helped me like pressure test certain structures and reason through how information should be presented and surface weak points faster. So AI will never take away like all the hard work we've put in through all of our years of experience. But what it can do for us is like it can amplify what we've always done, which is creating clarity, enabling decisions, and then helping just organizations move fast. So thanks, Becky, for that question.
Wow, that's very, very rich content. So I have to digest it a little bit. A couple of things I think you mentioned as very interesting, and that's very similar to the observation we had over the years as well, right? The three tiers of impact, right? From the nitty-gritty tactical level of a task to then the next level of the operating, and then you go to the decision level, right? So these are the evolution and the impact of a product ops I definitely observe as well. So to your point, AI can make everyone or every team work faster. But now work faster is not speed, right?
Yes,
Faster is not speed, because
it is
speed
not.
is the outcome of the speed. And that means like you mentioned it really nicely around its organizational decision making.
Yes.
And then the context across the organization, and that's evolving as the organization and the technology and the people and everything around us are changing. So I think one of the key things like you probably observed, and I think we definitely heard a conversation around it, is the evolution of every role, right? No matter product managers and engineers, product ops as well, right? Would your role go away, or would your role would elevate to different level as the problems and the bottleneck move to the different level? Really, that's the case. So awesome. I really love the answer.
Oh, and thank you for synthesizing that so well with your shared experiences. Like, I think we're all in this transition era. We're all kind of like, what is happening around our landscape? But I think, like, for me, I've seen, like, even working with all of the best AI tools, like, I subscribe to so many of them. I've seen what doesn't really change is like the pain we've gone through, the experiences we've gone through, that nobody can replace. And that approach no one can replace. So thank you, Becky, for that question.
Yeah, of course. That's the beauty of the community. We can really hear a lot more conversation around that. I think that's I really love your observation around different levels of organization, how they handle this challenge. And I also would like to, going back what you said earlier, right? Without data and infrastructure, there's no way to make decision, no matter human or AI, right? So the ones you mentioned, you kind of structure the organization and have the way to figure out how they work, because you effectively representing their product operating model on the way that's understand, right? One of the ways it can be understand by human, can be understand by AI. That's where you can up level your next level of decision making, right? So that's really awesome.
Thank you. All right.
So as you're going through that, it's never easy.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So you're going to hear so much different opinions and others. So what are some of the common challenges you face when you try to go through each of the level? Let's go from the top level, because I think a lot of times I think it's much easier when you try to help the PM team to do XYZ. Everyone could need some help, but when you go to the middle level or you go to the top level, that started to have a different goals and purpose for different people. So maybe we can start with the top. What are some of the challenges you face working with the executives? Then we go to the middle. It's like the executive PM and stakeholder come together, and then we can, maybe you have time to touch upon a little bit of PM and sort of your level 3 level. operating lane?
Sure. So when we think about challenges, I think all of us face these challenges, right? I think they're not unique to one organization. I think every level that you talk about, Becky, like whether it be executives, PMs, delivery teams, and you also talked about stakeholders, they're all operating under real pressure. It's just different kinds of pressure. And sometimes the pressures don't align. We have to take a step back. And I always look at this lens of different teams. All of these different teams fall under different functions. Executives are reporting into the board, or like they're accountable for the board, like PMs are balancing their scope and learning. Delivery teams are overloaded. Executives want outcomes, right? And stakeholders want to see progress and reassurance. And all of those functions for them, the success of their definition of success could be different than what your team or what product operations or product team's definition of success is. And so it is most of the friction or challenges may not come from like conflict. It's really is a mix. I've seen it really is a mix of human stress and sometimes unclear expectations. So what is important to recognize that product operations is also like that pillar for alignment. And alignment is a simple word. We all talk about it really simply, but there are so many nuances around it. Like first, you have to build the trust so people know you'll represent them fairly. Second, you have to externalize expectations, right? Like you have to write things down, document, make trade-offs really visible, tell people, like be explicit about where your directives are coming from. And third, like you need like shared cadence, like we talked about before. And when it comes to challenges, I want to quickly like touch base on an example I saw for myself, Becky. And I think it's interesting. It's a very interesting example because I was asked to lead like a business critical initiative on behalf of product engineering and data team. And my stakeholders were finance and accounting. Now, keep in mind, this was a very out of comfort project for me because it was not a traditional product problem. It was a business problem where we needed like data to spin up dashboards. We needed product and engineering to change workflows if needed. And so product and engineering were also involved. The domain was unfamiliar. The pressure was high. So at that point, I think, and when I joined the project, we had a backlog of, I saw like a list of 120 work items. So when I came into that picture, I think what helped product operations was bringing in that product sense and that operational excellence mindset, which is number one is like we need to understand our stakeholders, right? And the pressure that they're under, like what each group is accountable for and what failure looks from their perspective. That's the first thing. The second thing is like turning the chaos into something like readable. So for me, it was like making sure we all aligned on shared definitions. Like, okay, this is what this metric really means to you and to you. Like that was super important. But also like those 120 items, let's turn it into a backlog that we like product people understand. And so clear, visible backlog with ownership, context, rich risk attached, right? And then the third thing is actually like do the product thing, which is ruthlessly prioritizing and identifying the quick wins. So I think that is really important, which is like once you have quick wins, you immediately have a validation with your external teams, your external stakeholders, and your executives that, okay, the team is making some progress. That also buys you valuable time for like the harder problems because we're all under pressure. But those quick wins like allow us that moment of like cheer and happiness we all need during work. And then step 4 is like really bringing in, for me, this business problem really helped because we worked with product cadence, which meant that I had daily stand-ups. We had like actual like leadership check-ins every 2 weeks. We had incremental updates that we celebrated every week, be it clearer reports, be it better views. So I think at the end of it, when you think about like the work, it was a massive project, which took us about a year and a half. But when we completed it, I think what product operations did in this process was enablement. So, when you think about all the challenges, if we are able to enable our stakeholders, our partners better, then, if we're able to show them the product operating sense of iterating fast and like getting feedback, improving on the next version, I think, we immediately zone into what matters, which is let's bring in the structure, let's bring in the prioritization, and let's bring some clarity to the ambiguity we face.
That is awesome. So again, there's just so much to unpack, but I would just highlight a few things. I think those are very helpful. The first and foremost thing is the word clarity and the word alignment. The alignment had a bad reputation sometimes. It feels very structured, bureaucracy, meetings, and can be, right? But the end of the day is alignment is the act, but the result is the clarity. So when you think about it, really what you're trying to get is you're trying to get clarity across the organization of what's important, like the definition of a metrics. There's a semantic layer, right? So if we talk about it, the definition of the metric, the semantic meaning of the metric, if you don't have that definition, you're going to move to the wrong direction. Therefore,
Absolutely.
alignment is for clarity, not alignment because I want to have meetings. And I
Yes.
think it's very, very important for product ops and anyone in this connective tissue role to say, what I'm trying to enable here is a clarity. And you can call it alignment. Alignment is it's a work itself, right? It's action. So I really love that. And it's just a side story. We were talking about the nature's show. You see the school of fish swim very fast, school of bird, like they don't have a quote unquote alignment meetings, but they know where everyone's moving, so they drive that instinctively. So a good operating rhythm actually enable that, right? So you know where you're going and everyone moves. Right? It's a very fast, faster actually than individual. So I think that's the when you come to the state of product ops, that really are operations, or I don't even want to put product ops, could be business ops. Like you said, your role wasn't, right? The product management approach is really how do I drive outcome in the most effective way? And that's you brought that to a business context. The product is not just for engineering. Like that's the thing we have to think about. It's not just for engineering, right? That's a very, very cool story. And I wanted to highlight one last thing you mentioned. I think it's also very cool. It's quick wins.
Yes.
I think it's very, very important to have a quick win, especially when people doubt you, right? Quick win give you validation on, did we move the right direction, right? That's like the first, maybe not a lot, but the first validation say, is the clarity we're going. So I love how you brought that rhythm practice to just every day, because everyone creates product. Everyone. You don't need engineering to create product today, especially in today's world, but even in business, in other organization, marketing has product. This is product. So awesome, love it. Now, in the AI era, though, I would say, how product ops and product team, practitioners think of upskilling yourself. What are the things that actually matter? What are the things that sustainable, right? Because models evolve, technology evolve. So how do you think about it? What would you observed?
Yeah, and I want to say I'm as overwhelmed as everybody in the room right now and everybody everywhere because it's all over our LinkedIn feed. I think, Becky, we mentioned that and talked about it together. It's in our news, it's in every product and business conversation. What doesn't change, obviously, is what we have, the experience that I talked about, like all our blood, sweat, and tears. That doesn't change, right? But what I think we now need to change ourselves and upskill is like how we proactively engage with AI. And really, I think for me, it was a hard lesson when I started going down, like I'm trying to understand what's happening. Like this was about like 1.5, 2 years ago. Outside of ChatGPT, there were so many new tools, so many new terms. And I built like, there was nothing clear for me to learn. So I built like my own personal roadmap and I tried to learn everything. And I tell you, was the wrong thing because you don't need to know all the cool tools. You don't need to learn everything. You just need to learn what actually adds value to your work, which is in your product landscape or your product operations landscape. So I think a practical, like when I look at it, like there are 4 or 5 steps I think in my mind. First is like understanding the tools landscape on a high level. Like for you, like in your day to day, why do you use Notebook LM versus why do you use Perplexity for your source backed answers? There is, Napkin AI, there is Gamma, there are a lot of tools. And I understand not all companies allow you or have the access to these tools, but there's enough resources out there to have your own like ideation of like what a tools landscape looks like right now. The second one is something that I think everybody in this forum is doing, which is getting hands-on or early with your real work. Like if you can't do that at your company, do that with your personal work. But like synthesize like your messy inputs, the thoughts in your head, structure your ambiguous problems, or like even like drafting your narratives. Like I think everybody is already doing it. But a third thing I think is very important for product people, but also for product operations is like experimenting with rapid prototyping, vibe coding. I mean, it is the talk of the hour, but it is very important to know that like you may not get the chance to build within your company, because you're solving messy problems, things, legacy systems, and that is very important. But if you don't get the chance to do that outside of your job and build something small, do a vibe coding project, because at that point you actually see how AI powered systems actually behave. And that experience will be incredibly valuable when you later partner with product and engineering. So start to build that muscle on the side. That is so important. Of course, prompting is important. You can ask your LLM to prompt for you, but then you still need to know how to structure your intent, your context, your constraints. Like those are important. So you still need to understand prompting. And then the final thing I think about upskilling, and this is something that Becky said in our rapid fire round. I still remember you talked about AI evaluations and the fact that it's so important in this day and age. When we spoke at the panel last year, Becky, in December, and that is very important. I think it is a very key role that product operations can, help product managers, engineers in the future, is that when prompts change, models change, you need to reevaluate your outputs. Now, I will go and take a step back and say that you may not be able to do evaluations in your day-to-day job. You may not be able to do these things. That should not stop you from taking up a small side project, building it up on Replit or Lovable, and then using your prompts to evaluate your output on the OpenAI playground. Like it is okay. You can make all the mistakes on your side project, because at the end of the day you will still learn a little bit more than you did 2 weeks ago. So I think having
Right.
a mental roadmap is important.
Yeah, I really love how you think about that in a few ways, right? So having that's something that product ops can do really well, which is when you have so much demand, so much possibilities, how do you focus where you go? So having a roadmap of sorts is really helpful, both in terms of upskilling in the AI era or anywhere you go, right? So I think sometimes the people say, oh, okay, go to this company. There's so many things to do. How do I do it? Create a roadmap is very important. It's not just a product manager's thing, because guess what? It's everybody's thing. Everybody has a roadmap. And how do you handle that? I also think that you mentioned a few things about, just getting hands-on, even at a smaller scale of the whole sort of the life cycle of AI-driven product development. It's really important as well, because in many ways, think about it, our customers as a product ops is actually product teams, engineers, business, and all the others, right? So this is almost like an empathy as well. So if we don't understand at some level, it's very difficult to say how the world is changing and how the organization needs to update, adapt, and how me and in this role help the organization to adapt. And I think it's critical to have knowledge on that. I think there were a big debate some time ago on, well, should PMs to do vibe coding, or, shouldn't they be talking to customers? I think the question is not like how much what vibe coding you have to do and how deep you have to do, but you kind of have to know a little bit, because it's just the language these days, right?
Yeah.
You have to know
Absolutely.
what is the definition of a context? What is the definition of, what is the definition of, the drift? What's the definition? Because we can use the same terminology to talk to our stakeholders, partners, and customers as well. So I totally agree with you. We need to stay abreast on things, even though that could look like a lot going on. The key is to say, how do I prioritize things to the most important ones? And then we do that over time, and the depth versus the breadth of them. Great call out. Now,
Thank you.
as the organization grows, obviously more coordination required, and we call it a coordination tax, if you will, right? Become a real burden. How do you see that? And, how do you minimize it? And and still keeping, either you call it alignment or you call it clarity. What is the balance of all that moving pieces and when things move faster?
Yes, I love the way you put coordination text. That that framing, because I think most teams feel it before they can even name it, that it's coordination text, and it's all of us have felt it. It's not about, like you said, too many people. It's not about too many meetings. It's just about different stakeholders needing like different things and operating across like different growing complexity. So for me, Becky, I experienced this clearly, very clearly, in an organization that was scaling rapidly across multiple cities. And this organization had a hardware software play. So every launch from the outside looked similar because we had similar SOPs, but regulations like varied enough state by state that sometimes like the hardware design itself had to change a little bit. And at that point, it was, my first role, honestly, like operating across not just operations and software and engineering, but across hardware and overseas manufacturing as well. And for me, that coordination text was really real. Like I felt it deep in my bones. And the problem at that point, I think everybody will relate to, is was not effort. Everybody's working super hard. Like everybody's trying to do the real thing. It is that people were operating off like slightly different information and trying to coordinate through different conversations. Like I had WeChat going on with our overseas manufacturing, I had WhatsApp, I had Slack, I had email. It was chaos. And so at that point, product operations and the mindset we bring is not just like making sure we are updates givers, but it's all about like shared structure. The first thing I think is, and I know Dragonboat does it really well, like, but having like establishing that single source of truth. At that point, we used Confluence, and it's something that people talk about a lot, like have a single shared source of truth. But little did I realize like how in this coordination tax madness, how important that was to have our SOPs, our regulatory updates, our launch changes all in one place. The next thing was like making sure we standardize our signals, which means that, and I learned it the hard way, Becky, around my journey, in my professional journey, is that giving each group the right amount of signal, like teams need execution details, but leaders need like risk and progress. And I've learned it, that not everybody needs to know everything that your team has done. And so that is super important. And with AI, it can really like help you craft those narratives separately to different audiences. But third is also like that design feedback loop that product operations does so well, that goes back directly into product and engineering. That was very, very good, like very, very helpful for us. Like what was happening with our overseas manufacturing, like giving it right back to the teams. So all of this, right, you reduce the coordination overhead through clarity. So I think like you said, Becky, clarity and alignment, these are simple things, right? What I just said, like we did this, this, this. But once this is in place, once those simpler things are in place, coordination overhead can drop noticeably. So I think like for me, coordination tax is really simple. Like having a shared single source of truth is sometimes just the best solution to have.
Right. And then the contextually aware to who the people and the level of the information. And by the way, that's basically speaking of a Dragonboat, of course.
Yeah.
But to your point, though, I think the more complex the organization are, actually, we had a statistics to say in the knowledge profession, there are about 30 to 50% of the time you spend on coordination, which some of them are required because I need input, need collaboration, but there's also work led to getting ready for it. In product, the coordination tasks go from 50 to up to 90%. We all know how many meetings do we have. Let's just ask ourselves, how many meetings do we have? So we're hopeful to, like you said, having the context and context and up-to-date information that source the truth on decisions, the priorities, all the others. So it's self-explanatory. So you spend time only on evaluating what's the best option versus try to create clarity and continuously communicating on clarity, because once you define, it's there, right? So we can see it. So great question, answer. I think there are audience that ask similar questions as well, right? So when you're in the era of AI, you have to move fast. The coordination text is just going to kill you, right?
It is. It is.
You just have to really not looking at, the old way of doing things.
Yes.
Now, as we're talking about as AI reshapes, so shapes always reshapes. So what's changing for product ops? How do what is changing? What's the same? What's not changing?
I think like right now, let's all face it that we're all overwhelmed. We're all like kind of like deer in the headlights. We are trying to keep up. I think I can see it basically in my journey. I'm like, what is happening? And we're all trying to keep up, right? But I think so. Let's all empathize that are the feelings we are feeling are real, and let's empathize with the fact that we are all trying our best and we don't know. But at the same time, what we can change or what we can change in our professional journey, something I talked about, which is like, let's just get better at upskilling. Like it is okay to continue to upskill, even on a smaller level on the side. Let's just continue to do that. So what's changing for product operations, I think, is like, just like I talked about, like, let's just be more fluent in the AI enabled world we're operating in, because that is our reality. That means, actually, like Becky, you said, like it's not just about just a vibe coding or evaluations. It's about being able to speak the language also well enough in order for you to adapt quickly with your teams, with your eng teams, with your with your research teams. And most of the tools we already use right now, right, like analytics platforms, Jira, they have AI built into them. So the other thing is, being effective means understanding how those capabilities, now the AI capabilities within the tools that you already are in, how do they work and how do they save time. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing that's changing, and I think you talked about the debate, which I haven't seen yet, but I want to see that. But because I think it's the level of technical literacy that's expected from us. And I don't mean like we're going to go and write back and code, but what it means is understanding the mechanics well enough. Like, have you done a vibe coding project? Do you know how a system prompt might, affect downstream? Can you spin up a rough prototype? And it is not, I'm not saying that to like pressure us, but I'm saying that, like, have some time to do these things, like build one by one, like a little bit of muscle, because that level of technical comfort now, and I'm facing it, I'm seeing it, it's becoming table stakes. And so that kind of technical literacy is important. And it's easier than ever because you have AI with you to teach you, like you were, 10-year-old or 12-year-old, or however you want to put it. Sometimes I have the lamest questions, and like I'm like, hey, can you help me through this? So let's kind of build up on what we have, and let's build up a technical literacy. The third thing I think that's changing, and I think that everybody in this audience agrees, is the speed at which we can learn and synthesize. I think curiosity has always been important, but now the barrier to exploring new ideas is so much lower. So if, like, for me, like the example I gave was like having a product operating model at a different kind of organization, a matrix organization that I was unfamiliar with. I could literally synthesize a ton of research on like how this matrix model works, how change management looks like, just through like researching like about similar organizations on Perplexity. So like that should give you some idea of like using that AI to leverage your research and synthesis. So, but what's not changing? What's not changing is our blood, sweat, and tears that we have come to this point along the journey, and the very focus, which is like we are here to create clarity, we are here to create enablement, we are here to create enable decisions, and we're here to reduce the chaos. So that's not changing, and what's not changing is the way we work with humans and the way our relationships are. Like those relationships are so important, and so those will never change. So I think that is something I think we can all agree on.
Right. I think that it's a really good balance in terms of thinking the hard skills when the technology is available and when resources available. So I think that curiosity is very important so that when you speak to your customers, aka stakeholders like product managers, execs, you speak the same language, not that if you're come across this, you don't really know what they're working on, how they work, how could this role, which is really a enablement and amplification role,
Yes.
be successful. So I love that, and I definitely and really want to talk more around how we should and not be scared of technology. There are some people say, well, there's so much expectations for everyone, and guess what? It is. That's just how the world works. So you're gonna have to adapt. Right. The other part I think is also very important. You mentioned about the things that won't change, right? So the things that won't change is something you have to say, what is not changing about how we're going to do it differently? Like, like you said, enablement or amplification or clarity. This is the need. It will never go away. but how we're going to enable them is what is going to change, right? The hard skills are using it. So I think this is really helpful. And I think their audience question around, going back to your questions around things around enablement, how much you're embedded and how much like on the quote unquote, on the factory floor, on the delivery, and how much you are in the sort of the on the leadership, release, launch, management side. So as you think about that, I've seen that you go from organization to organization, they may have a different needs. Like one of the example you mentioned is like they're building a matrix organization. They want you to come in to build a structure. And in that case, you probably want to be on the floor a little bit more, but you operate at a higher level.
Yeah.
So if we would take that, right, sort of multiple demand for product ops and the role confusion sometimes on product ops to say, where do you operate? How do you relate to program managers or delivery? How do you work with the product and the launch? Now, what would be a piece of advice you will give product ops leaders that who wants to help the organization to move faster and drive outcome and it still be something that are feasible?
Yes, and thank you, Becky, for that. I think one of the things I want to mention here, I think with product operations or being in product management, right, in that scope, whether you are on the floor or whether you're on the leadership level, you must always feel the pain. Like there is no way, like I've been through startups where I was an employee number 7, which grew to hundreds of people, but I was also a part of a startup that had 3,000 people. And I was more on the leadership level, but it doesn't mean that you can only function on that. There are different levels of expectations, but at the same time, you cannot, like, you have to relate to the pain. So I think that that piece of advice, that deeply feel the pain, cut through the noise and stay grounded in real pain. It's something that also one of my previous managers, IO at Carbon Health, like he would like always tell us, like, go one level deep, but then go 10 levels deeper after that. I'll always keep that with me. So there's, that one piece of advice going forward is like, stay close to the pain, because sometimes what happens is organizations, like if you see a pain point where the organization, where it's slowing you down and it needs help, like you don't have to wait for it to be perfectly scoped out, like go, let's step into it. And the second thing I think is like, in this day and age, like you said, like being innately curious and being innately like knowing like what is out there, and be curious with your stakeholders, be curious with your with your product managers, lean in and figure out like what are the signals I'm hearing and then step into it. But a third thing I would like to say is like, whether you are on the floor or embedded or whether you are there, I have been on both sides of the table. I was extremely embedded when we were doing the product operations effort for our mass vaccination efforts, and then when we started scaling our product operations a lot, and then I was more on the function level. But it doesn't matter, because as long as you understand the pain of your stakeholders, and that doesn't just mean your customers, your stakeholders are your product managers, your engineering, as long as you understand their pain and figure out solutions for enablement, I think that's the glory of it. And I think the last thing is, no matter where you're in your career, it does not matter. The best thing is knowing that you should get your hands dirty when the opportunity comes to it, because there's nothing more glorifying than doing that and feeling that rush that, okay, I did something that was impactful today.
Right. I know we're coming up on time, so just want to quickly summarize a few things. I think we talk a lot of really rich topic on many aspects, but really think about it is that as a product ops person, you're really just steering the whole organization moving forward, regardless in terms of understanding clarity, right? By acting of various forms of alignment, but the clarity is moving people forward, right? And then the second part you mentioned around sort of the embedded, or it's like an ambient or dedicated. I think it's as the organization evolves, the maturity is different. So you take a different approach. That makes a lot of sense. In where is the pain? I love the things that one level deep and then 10 levels deeper.
I love that advice.
Right. So this is like that, or stop the bleeding, and you solve the system problems. All this like a really good practice in how do you really make sure you make some impact right away, and then you solve more foundational problem or challenges. That's really cool. By the way, it's funny that, obviously Dragonboat is a product operations platform, right? And using for decisions, and everyone's using it, not just a product ops person, right? Because no product, there's no product ops. But end of the day, it's very funny because we have two types of agents. We have an agent called ambient agent, are the ones running in the background, still enable you. And then we have embedded agent where you can do specialty. So it's so funny how it's funny that you mentioned that. I was like, oh, wow, that's very, very interesting. So.
Oh, and that's great, Becky. That's because you've been able to, and you and your team have been able to build this out too, because you've felt the pain, you've lived through it, you've seen the different stages, and that's why, like, this sounds amazing, and I'd love to take a demo of it too.
Awesome, great. So I think we're coming up on time. Anna, going back to you, you want to take it over?
Sure. Becky, thank you. And thank you, Rukmini, for sharing your helpful advice. I think this was a really helpful conversation and so rich. So unfortunately, we end up without having time for all the questions, but we can continue the conversation in our Slack. Last but not least, a few helpful resources. If you want to connect with Rukmini, feel free to get in touch with her on LinkedIn, or also join our Slack to continue the conversation there. And if you are leaving today with fresh ideas on achieving speed, clarity, and outcomes in the AI era, Dragonboat can help you. So feel free to check it out at dragonboat.ai. And with that, I think it's time to wrap up. So thank you all for joining us today. And a special thank you again to Rukmini and Becky for such an incredible chat. Stay tuned and let's continue the convo in Slack. See you all next time.
Thank you. And Anna, I saw a lot of questions I could not answer. If you could send me those questions, I would like to reach out to them and personally answer them. I think there were so many great questions that I'm seeing through the chat right now. So thank you everyone for your questions. I'll make sure to return them to you.
Thanks everyone. I truly enjoyed the conversation, Rukmini. It's very insightful. Love to connect.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.